that means it's not granted by the Constitution. If you hear anybody, and I hear it from many people, where do our rights come from? The Bill of Rights. No. As I often tried to say to people, if our rights come from the Bill of Rights, what did those poor fools do when they were writing the thing in the first place? How on earth did you write the Bill of Rights when you need the Bill of Rights to know what rights to put in them? No, that doesn't make any sense. So they must have been there, and they must have a source somewhere else. Now, some people will argue, I think not entirely incorrectly, that retained by the people could refer, Alan, to common law understanding of certain things that were rights that people had under the common law. And I'm sure that it partly meant that. See, because that would have been acknowledged as a premise that the states were not going to be stripping people of those things, some of it involving marriages, parental rights, inheritances, property, that were decided according to the common law. You're not going to lose all of that in America. But that would still require the human governments and so forth. But what about people who didn't come from other, but didn't have any such rights and so forth and so on? They're not referred to in the, because it says retained by the people as a whole. What rights would be retained by the people as a whole? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Since all the people, last time I looked, were human beings. Well, some of them denied their human rights and human thises and that's, but still human beings. And they were acknowledged, by the way, all of them, including the slaves, as persons. See, so they're part of the people of the United States. Why did you say that, Alan? I say that because the Constitution at various reprises, it knows the difference between citizens and persons because it uses different words at different times, even in the Bill of Rights. And certain of the things that are talked about in the Bill of Rights say no person shall be deprived. See? They're referring, therefore, to anyone who is a person. But the most important indication to me that black folks and all these people, some people sometimes try to pretend, well, they're not persons, they're the very clause they cite, the 3/5 clause, when you read it, instead of just accepting a lot of propaganda about it, it clearly states that black people are persons. It doesn't say that black people are 3/5 persons. No, it says 3/5 of all other persons. Therefore, the people they're referring to are persons. You don't count all those persons for the purposes of dividing up the representation in the Congress, but they are all persons. You see what I'm saying? So all the people are included in that reference to the people in the Ninth Amendment. And what does it say? That the rights that it shall not be construed, the Constitution shall not be construed in any way that allows the enumeration of rights to become the excuse for denying or disparaging. Denying or disparaging, that's very interesting. The denial we sort of can easily understand, right? Why disparage? Go to the dictionary, look up disparage. Disparage basically means to speak badly of, to denigrate in some way, to lower the status of, right? And by the way, it is a legal term. You actually, it has a formal legal meaning. And so if you disparage the rights, you are demoting them, you are depriving them somehow of substance that they ought to have and lowering them. Tell me, if you are the beneficiary of an understanding that acknowledges that you are exercising an unalienable right, we do notice, don't we, in America, that unalienable rights trump laws. If a law is passed in this country and you can demonstrate that it involves a necessary denial of unalienable right, the unalienable right wins out over the law. Because the unalienable right comes from a higher sovereign. And our understanding of the law has been, that's why the Supreme Court can sometimes make decisions in cases where they evoke some doctrine of rights and say, oh no, they have the right, this law violates that right, therefore I can't impose that part of the law because it's not constitutional to go against people's basic rights. Yes? But then they try to pretend that the only rights that have that privilege are those enumerated, but the Ninth Amendment says that's not true. It says we retain others. What are those others? Well, I don't know. They could be common law. They could be this called Dutch law. I don't know what, but I do know this, that in the founding generation there was no doubt that they included those unalienable rights that come from Almighty God. And what could be more fundamental to the very existence of and perpetuation of human nature than the rights of the natural family, the authority inherent in the family, as well as the responsibility and actions that must be undertaken by the family by the command of God. And yet they want to equate that with a relationship that in no way relates to that status of unalienable right. They want to equate an unalienable right with a right fabricated not even by a legislature, but by the whims of justices who don't even have the power of legislation. Right? Will somebody tell me where they're getting this from and why we are patiently listening to others who tell us they've said it, it's the supreme law of the land? Well, I don't care who says it. I don't care if Cruz says it and Trump says it and Carson said it. I reject them all because it can't possibly be true. And so I say that if we really mean to maintain our form of government and way of life, then I think we need to start objecting, not just with words, but in deeds, to these activities that have now, and I thought one of the brilliant things about Mr. Vieira's presentation today was that he's showing us how long this has been going on, that it's being built into the very fabric. And what am I talking about? The effort by an elitist faction, a faction of people who think we're the ones, we've got the power, we've got the money, we've got the media, we've got the wisdom and the expertise, and therefore this whole form of government was a mad experiment that opens the gates to human depravity. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys look like the ones who are opening the gates to human depravity. Seems to me that this people you are denying their rights and disparaging their liberty, this people is the one who's trying to stand in your way, trying to stand for decency, trying to stand for constraint, trying to stand for the discipline that meets the responsibilities of our humanity, and that this elitist class is trying to rip all of those things away. I think it's time that we made it our purpose to go back to the Declaration, to go back to the Constitution, to understand not only what they say, but how they relate to one another. And finally, and most importantly of all, how they relate to the simple truth that is stated in the Declaration. For at the end of the day, because our rights depend upon it, our way of life does not depend upon freedom, unalienable rights, or even the Constitution. All of those things ultimately have no ground on which to stand, except we acknowledge, as the founders did, the authority of the Creator, the Almighty God, who is the supreme judge of the world, and to whose providence they trusted the fate of their revolution, even as we must now entrust the fate of our effort, come what may, to make sure that we are not deprived of its fruits. God bless you.
Croc TV.